I missed it. I missed it for 6 months solid. And she finally told me, but it wasn't because she felt safe. It was because she had nothing left to lose.
Hey, Nicole, what do you get when a former corporate CEO and a do-gooding executive walk into a recording studio?
Well, Erin, nothing, because the two of us are usually on my couch or Zoom, because wine.
You get a podcast created for Gen X women who are bought into the corporate world, but fed up with the BS.
I know, it's how to thrive the 9 to 5 or 6 or 7.
It's career therapy, it's comedy, it's definitely full-on authenticity. Basically, we give you tangible strategies to rise in your career without compromising everything else.
Because work doesn't have to suck. Hey, my friend, it's Erin here, coming to you with like the worst allergies ever. So hopefully I don't sneeze in this intro, but I have such a fun interview today with my new friend, Phil Putnam, who is a former corporate executive. So most of you, that's where you're at. You're in the corporate space. He gets you. But he is now a speaker and the author of Desire-Based Leadership. And he is also super authentic and super sassy. And this is going to be a hell of a ride because we are, in particular, when we talk about a couple of things, but we mostly talk about menopause in leadership and how we're missing the ball and how we're not addressing it and not talking about it enough and how it's really impacting women. And so I know a lot of you either are in menopause, going through menopause, scared of menopause, because you're scared of either when you're going to get it or you're a man and you're scared of even talking about it. So here's some of the things we're going to talk about. First of all, we're going to talk about his sort of infamous chip story and how it gave birth to this concept of give to get leadership, which is really, really powerful and simple and interesting. We also talk about what leaders get wrong about employee motivation. That, we think it's about the company's goals. It's not. It's actually about the person's life's goals. And I'll tell you what, just this small stop on that road and that conversation about how to change the questions you ask and the things you think about to motivate your team, it's priceless. We also talk about attrition math and, what freaking expensive it is not to keep the good people there. And whether you're a leader or you're the good people, understanding this math, I think, is really powerful. And then we get into the menopause conversation. We talk about things like the cost of the misunderstanding of it and the impact it has. And we also get really deep and talk about how Phil's friend's near suicide attempt really was related to what she was going through perimenopause and how that's, fueled this super white gay man to be taking on this cause and speaking on stages and getting bold with audiences, both here in the podcast, but also within, the corporate boardrooms and on stages about how we need to treat menopause differently because of its impact on really oftentimes the greatest employees that a company can have. So without further ado, enjoy this conversation with Phil.
One thing that keeps coming up a lot lately in my conversations around like cross-generational leadership is, of course, the battle over return to office.
Yeah.
I've got this whole approach to how leaders can go from, collision to chemistry when it comes to like, you have to come back to the office. But one thing I really noticed is, I don't think I've ever heard a leader thank their workforce for offering up their homes as a workspace to keep their businesses alive during shutdown. And I know it's easy for a lot of leaders to be like, well, you got to still have a paycheck. You got to still have a job during COVID. So we did you a favor. I mean, that might be true empirically, although I don't agree with the perspective, but still, you know what? We offered up our homes for no compensation as office space. And so now, and the other thing is that for jobs that can be done remotely, COVID proved that it could be done remotely. And now you're going back to saying you must be in the office. We believe that we work best when we're together. And especially when you say that to a Gen Zer who's only been in the adult workforce post-college, maximum 6 years
Yeah.
at this. Because Gen Zers right now are 13 to 28 years old. And if we look at 22 as the average exiting college and entering the workforce, really only 6 years max. And what have the past 6 years been? A pandemic and then constant layoffs. So, like, you've got somebody saying to you, it's about loyalty. We work best in the office, and you got to do it if you want to keep your job. And to a Gen Zer, they're like, my job can be done remotely, and I can get my paycheck from multiple sources. And, you know, I don't need to do this. And so there's a huge amount of, I think, collision around just this lack of empathy and understanding. But a simple thank you, a simple acknowledgement. I know it may make me sound silly and stupid, but I don't.
No, I've never
think
heard
it
somebody
goes all the
say
way.
it. I've never heard anybody say it that way. I think we've probably all had thoughts that, like, look, it was a win-win situation, and some, and maybe it wasn't always
Sure.
50, but nobody said it that way, and I'm not surprised that you did. So your whole brand is around this concept of give to get, and it's interesting because when I first read that, and of course I'd met you, but I didn't know everything about you other than I fucking love you. Ooh, I've heard that in the context of, like, give, like in a sales context, give, and then somebody will give back, right? There's other books probably in similar, contexts, but I love, you're really talking about it at a leadership level, and it's so simple. So maybe first, I think it sounds like there was like an interview or something, and I don't know the details, that sort of you had a light bulb moment. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll tell the story. I'll tell the chip story, because this is actually where it all started. And this was back in my mid-20s. I'm now 46 years old. And in my mid-20s, I was like most people in their mid-20s. You're just trying to get on your feet financially as an adult, right? So I was renting a house with a couple of people in Northern California, where I was born and raised. And I had a car. It was a pre-certified, a pre-owned Honda Civic. I was very proud of that.
Of course it was.
The sensibility of that choice. The color was Merlot. And like often happens with Hondas, the driver's side door handle broke. The door handles tend to be a weak spot with Hondas. Otherwise, I think they're great. And so I couldn't get in my car through the driver's side door from the outside. So I'd have to crawl in through the passenger side, and like the strangest exhibition of small space gymnastics you ever seen a very like tall, long-limbed man have to do. But I was good at it because I fold up real nice, And so anyway, I needed money. That's where I was at in my life. I was lucky to have a job at one of the largest technology companies on earth. And I was one of the phone support operators that you would call if your laptop couldn't connect to Wi-Fi. Anyway, I was really good at this job. And eventually my boss's boss's boss was like, hey, I want you to be a stop on my listening tour. And so obviously the listening tour is like a relic of mid-2000s.
Yeah, you're like, okay, buddy, you just get ready.
Right. So, because as you can probably already tell, I'm real fucking mouthy. Was even less artful about it when I was young. So anyway, I'm feeling great because I'm thinking this huge company wants to know what I think it's like to work here. Anyway, whatever the reason I get booked, the day finally comes and we're in it, and we're rolling along, and I'm thrilled and he's thrilled, and he's asking me all these questions about what it's like to work there. And then eventually he kind of slows down, and like the energy gets focused, and he gets this self-satisfied look on his face. Like when your dog brings you the newspaper and is waiting pat on the head. And he says, and what about the chips, Phil? Do you like the chips? And what he was asking about was that every week, once a week, somebody would roll around like a bag full of bags of snack, or a cart full of bags of snack chips. So Fritos, Cheetos, pretzels, and always like 2 bananas. You're picturing the bananas right now.
I picture the bananas because my husband has what I call a traveling banana that goes in the outside of his lunchbox to work every day because he goes to the office 5 days a week. And 95% of the time comes back from the office. So I know exactly what it looks like. They don't travel well.
Nope. And they're always bruised.
Yeah.
And they're always those two bananas. But anyway, this is the employee satisfaction program.
Sure.
And so he's like, do you like the chips? And of course, being real mouthy, I told him. And I said, well, sure. I like chips. I enjoy chips, but I don't need chips. I need money. Can I have money? Like, I literally said this to this huge executive at this huge company. And what he did next is he never listened to me again. And we worked in that office on the same floor for 2.5 years after this conversation. And he never engaged meaningfully with me again beyond some really uncomfortable hellos, like at the urinal, at the bathroom. It's always uncomfortable for men anyway, but this was like an added layer.
Right.
Now, the drama queen in me sort of liked the
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, it took until probably 10 years after that conversation. So several years after I didn't even work there anymore, for me to finally realize that he was the one that missed the point.
Mm-hmm.
That like, it wasn't me being too direct or too mouthy or whatever. It was that he wasn't at all interested in what was going to motivate me to bring his business my top performance every day. He just wanted me to reflect back to him, what he'd already chosen to offer. And now I have to be fair. And I do mean this. That is not all he was as a leader. I believe he's genuinely well-intentioned because he did a lot of other really great things in my interactions with him. And no one deserves to be judged on one moment of their work. But in that one moment, he behaved like a clown. And so then I kind of telescoped out and I thought, well, how does this stack up with any other leader I've had? When it came to conversations, my performance and my compensation were the topic at hand. And what I realized is that every leader throughout my career had tried to motivate my performance based on how it would make the company more successful. And so it's that thing of like, hey, like, you matter here and you're tied into our success so close. And when you bring us your best every day, we'll hit our goals. Isn't that cool? And my response was always something like, well, yeah, I genuinely care about the success of the employers that I've had, but that's not why I work.
Yeah.
That's second place motivation at best. I work to get the life I want for myself and my loved ones. And so if we fast forward to when I started leading teams as a manager and an executive, and I worked primarily within tech for 25 years, large companies like Adobe, small startups like Sprinkler that are now valued at multiple billions. So I've kind of run the gamut on sizes of companies. And when I started having to motivate people, I just common sensed it one day. And I was like, well, what's the most effective way to get what I need most from someone? Well, it's to give them what they want most. What do people want? And then it became, why do people work? I said, well, of course, self-interest is actually the greatest, most reliable tool a leader can have for scaling out performance impact.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to beat human nature. Like, some leaders spend their entire career fighting that battle and trying to get their people to prioritize the needs of their business over the needs of their own lives. Total waste.
Yeah.
Total waste. It's like running a marathon with one leg and no prosthetic. Like, it's a total waste. You're never going to win that battle, so why try? So what I did is I thought, well, how do I use human self-interest as actually the greatest source of momentum? How do I get into that current and not only waste the effort of fighting human nature, but stop asking people to live in denial of what they want most and why they're here. And it changed everything. It just changed everything. And so I built a model out, and then that became my first conference talk, my first book, and it really launched my speaking and writing career.
I love that. What was the back to like what people want in your story. Like, I don't want chips, I want money, right? Which is sort of like probably the bookends, right? The chips are here and the money is at the top. I think so many people, there's a layer beyond money, and research shows us that the top motivation isn't money. It's usually autonomy, and that autonomy is to go after the things and do it the way you want.
Sure.
What was this when you were starting out? Because I would imagine part of this is just freaking ask them and ask the right questions so that they get at it, and maybe they get beyond just the money answer. Like, what do you mean about money? What do you want the money to do?
Sure.
Well, was there anything surprising that you found in people's answers that were sort of unexpected?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So in the model I built, income is one of the things I ask about. And you're right. The whole point is just you ask. If you want to know what's going to motivate someone's top performance, you just got to discover the details of the life they're trying to get for themselves in exchange for the work they give to your business.
Yeah. Oh, I love the way you said
So,
it. You got to understand the life that they want to leave in exchange for the.
yeah, the life they want to get in exchange for the work that they give.
Yep. I love that.
Because that's what they're in it for.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things I talk about is income. I talk about lifestyle, income, feelings, and employment. And in the income part, the most surprising thing that still is probably the most consistent answer in all of the questions is that I have literally, and I've run this model probably thousands of times now with people the past several years, and I have never, ever once had someone only say, I want to make this amount of money by this point in time. Now, roughly the percentage of people who have given a salary figure by a point in time is maybe 5% of the respondents I've worked with. And the other 95%, I'm sorry, those 5%, they also say, and this is what I want to use money for. And this is the impact I want it to make on my life. This is how I want it to make me feel. Okay. Other 95% have never said anything about an amount or point in time when I ask about their relationship with money. They talk exclusively about the life they want to live and how they want money to make them feel. So it's a lot. I want it to reduce my anxiety, increase my peace of mind. I want it to give me options when things go badly. I want it to give me the chance to care for my children with special needs. I need money to help me, take a vacation with those children with special needs or children who don't have special needs. I want to be able to have these experiences that to me equal the life that I desire. Yeah. So that was really the most fascinating and frankly, most illuminating thing because it got me out of the very traditional leadership thinking about people's relationship with their paycheck that I had been taught. And I find that what we're taught as leaders is that the point, like what people are in it for is the paycheck. That couldn't be more wrong. The paycheck is not the end goal for an employee. The paycheck is an input to the life they're trying to get in exchange for the work they give. But most leaders, they stop at the process of like, well, they give us the work, we give them the paycheck, and whatever they do from there is their own problem.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily wrong. It's not an employer's right to get involved in how people spend their money. But it's a great disadvantage to an employer to misunderstand why people work and then operationalize that belief around this all stops when they get a paycheck.
Yeah. Well, and two things. One, I think just the gift that you give of asking that question, because I would imagine a lot of people haven't gotten a hot second to actually think about, let alone articulate to their leader what they want, right? Like, so you and I both know coming from corporate, like how many seconds in the day, like zero, basically, do we have to dream, to think strategically about our life, to do some of the stuff that in the entrepreneurial world is a little more common. So I feel like if you just ask that question and most importantly, give them the space to think about it and articulate it, like you've already given them a gift. But then from there, what's an example of whether it's you or one of your clients, readers, whatever it is, people that have come to your talk, how do you action that? 'Cause so I'm sure our listeners are going, okay, great. Now my Gen Z employee has just told me that like they want the money so that in, 3 years they can go work from a boat in the Mediterranean.
Totally.
What now? What do I do with
Sure.
that information, especially when everybody's different?
Sure. The first thing you do is you expect to lose them in 3 years or less. That's it. They've already told you. This is what I want. This is what my goal is. And you're either going to be a part of helping me make that happen, or I'm going to go to an employer who will. But no matter which employer I leave to go live in a boat 3 years from now, I'm going to be living in a boat 3 years from now.
Yeah.
So
And most leaders I think I've worked with, I could picture some of them the first thing they would done, and I've actually had this happen to me when I said I was leaving Aetna, convince me why that is a dumb dream to have,
sure.
or why that's going to be, there what miserable parts are going to come with that. And I
Yeah.
know how like first is just like accept it.
Well, yeah, because here's the thing. Like, they're going to get the life they want. That's it. Like, and here's the other thing. It's actually far worse for a leader and for the business results you're responsible to generate if somebody gives up their dream to keep working at your company.
Mm.
There's two big reasons for that, and they're both financial. The first is as soon as somebody realizes they can't get the life they desire from the job they have, they will disengage and their performance will dip. So, and also, if you're not already in the flow of having this kind of conversation with them, they ain't going to tell you, because why the fuck should they? All the world has trained us to know is that the second you admit to your boss you're not happy, the egg timer on until you're gone just got started. So they're not going to trust you. And you know what? They shouldn't. It's not in their best interest. And we can't be offended by that. So, but their performance did. So now they're dragging down your business results, and you might not even be aware of it until, if you have a really good data apparatus in place to track performance impact, which most organizations don't.
Or most jobs aren't conducive to it, even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It'll probably be 2 to 3, 4 quarters until you have the next performance development conversation and discover that this person is clocking in at like 65% value for what you need from their headcount.
Yeah.
So that's the first reason why it's bad to keep them around if they're not going to get what they need and want. The second reason is sort of the business case of the heart of this, which is that it essentially costs anywhere from 5 to 12 times more to replace somebody than it does to satisfy them.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking like millions of dollars. So Forbes and Gallup have found that it takes anywhere between 50 to 200% of an individual contributor salary to do the operational process of finding, sourcing, and placing their replacement. And then it also factors in the cost of diminished value from that role for 9 to 12 months as the replacement comes up to full speed. That cost does not include the cost of paying the replacement in that first year of their employment. But if you have somebody who makes $150,000 a year and it's 150% cost to replace in your industry, that's $225,000 to get the replacement into the seat. And if you're in a 100-person company running 15% attrition, which is super low by comparison to the average these days, but let's say you're rocking it, and you need to stay at 100 people to hit your staffing plan this year, well, 15 replacements at $225K a piece is $3.375 million. That's all cost, and it's almost entirely unproductive cost. And now what's wild to me is I spent most of my career in sales and post-sales, so on the commercial side of enterprise organizations, where everybody, especially in sales, the brutality of that 90-day financial cycle is intense. And they are working their asses off, but they'll talk all the time about how revenue is everything. And they found their identity on it. All the while, they are incurring millions of dollars of attrition costs, almost gleefully, if not ignorantly, or ignorantly, if not gleefully. Well, profit is revenue minus cost. Every leader is obsessed with profitability, especially if you're a startup, trying to get acquired or get more money from your VC mommies and daddies. Why don't you care? why do you care about controlling the cost that's generated by probably the largest cost line item of any business, which is human resources?
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me. And that's why I will often, if I'm on site, like working with a customer, I'm going to call her someday if they're a senior leader. But like, hey, I'm curious, what's your attrition now? I literally have never had somebody be able to tell me, and I am baffled.
Hey guys, Erin here. Stop. Do not do it. Don't fast forward. I have something too important. I have a couple of very passive aggressive questions to ask you that you don't want to miss. Here they are. 1, do you find yourself often comparing yourself to others? Like, they work harder than me. They get noticed more than me. They have better luck than me. They're smarter than me. Or do you also just feel exhausted from having to always work as hard, if not harder, than everybody else to stand out and succeed? I know you have these challenges. We all do. And this is why I wrote the 50% rule. And I know you need to read another book like you need a hole in the head. But I'm telling you, this book and this rule, I'm obsessed with it. And it has changed my life. It has changed the lives of others around us. And it has also been the formula for success behind so many successful people. Savannah Bananas, Hamilton, Weird Al Yankovic. The 50% rule is the simplest shortcut to stop comparing, stop copying, stop chasing other people, and like literally compete in your league of your own. There isn't a day that doesn't go by where I stop myself and I'm like, oh, she did a talk that I wish I could do. She's got more. No, it doesn't matter. Because we don't compete in the same league. I compete in a league of my own because I am constantly 50% ruling things. So if you're interested in this concept, which, by the way, is more fun as a team sport, but at least start with yourself. You cannot miss this book. It's not only powerful, it's really freaking fun to read. That is always my number one goal. It was my number one goal with my first book. It's my number one goal with the 50% rule. I want to make it enjoyable to read it. Why? So that you read it. So if you feel like you are stuck with these comparison cramps or just all the symptoms that I talk about in the book of sleep running syndrome, self-doubt gout, and pioneer paralysis, and well, you have to read the book to find out more, then just go buy the darn book. Easiest way, go to Amazon, search the 50% rule, and I cannot wait to hear how you 50% rule things. I want to pivot a little bit to the thing that like stopped me in my tracks when we were sitting at lunch and talking a couple weeks ago, that I think our listeners will want to hear about. So this whole concept of, understanding, give to get.
Yeah.
And you told me at lunch, I also talk to audiences as a 47-year-old gay man about menopause.
I wanted to talk about this so much. Yes.
And like, there are definitely men to listen to our podcast. I will hear it from them. They'll remind me. But predominantly, we've sort of got those menopausal women who are sort of in their career for so long that they finally have just fed up with the BS and want a different way to go forward. And so let's talk about the impact of menopause. What is the biggest misnomer or miss in the workplace about addressing this inevitable sort of shutting down of organs of probably more than half of their employee base?
Sure. I think that the biggest misconception I see is that the naturally occurring biological impacts of menopause they're actually often misinterpreted as performance issues. Like, she's bad at her job now. Totally false, completely wrong. But the source of the misunderstanding, I think, is a few factors. The first is that still the majority of leadership, and especially seniors leadership, is consolidated among men and consolidated among heterosexual men. And, even a man who is as maybe clued in and as feminist and as empathetic as I am, which there's not many of us, even a man like me, we still have boy brain.
Yeah.
And no one ever teaches us this. No one says, hey, there's no such thing as a woman or anybody who has a uterus who's incredible at something 8 weeks ago and now struggles to do it, there's no such thing as she became bad at her job in 8 weeks. Like, that's not how human learning and skills work. Skills don't just fall out of your brain. Like, there's no logic to this, but because there's no conversation about it in a meaningful way, globally, but especially in the United States, and because all of the evils of sexism and racism and all the other forms of discrimination prime people to relegate women, as soon as they turn what? Well, 12, you know, like, it all lines up to, oh yeah, she's bad at her job and I got to put her on a PIP. And a big reason why I'm so passionate about this is because I did that. There's a number of stories here, but the first one is that I did this. I went down this road with a person I served as their leader. And again, I am probably the most feminist man I know. I have spent years delighting in learning from the women in my life about the female experience or about the trans female experience. And it's really, really important to me to facilitate success, and whatever women want to do, I want to help them do it.
Mm.
Right? And I missed it. I missed it for 6 months solid. And finally got to the point where we were on a PIP, and it was like the come to Jesus conversation. She finally told me, but it wasn't because she felt safe. It was because she had nothing left to lose.
Mm.
And I'll just never forget the fear that I sensed in her and the resignation. And that really had a profound impact on me. And then there's two more things that really drive me to this. The first is that I'm the third child of a single mother. How she provided for us, I literally cannot fathom. It is a Herculean task of providing as a parent that I will praise her for until the day I die. But my life has been enabled by the brilliance and the sacrifices of women. And I'm so fucking tired of women being relegated at the height of their value because people misunderstand this naturally occurring biological process. The third story, this is where it gets real intense, but is important. My closest friend in all of the world is this unbelievable woman named Brooke. And I have her permission to share her story and use her name when I do. She got hit fucking hard by perimenopause, was refused proper treatment for 2 years by her entire medical team, including her OB. And because she'd been treated for clinical depression previously, her medical team just latched onto that. It was like, oh, mental illness, depression. And what was really animating this from the doctor's side is the way that perimenopause has been described to me is essentially it's where you have all the experiences and symptoms of full-blown menopause, but the marker in your blood is not high enough to qualify for the course of treatment that a doctor would prescribe for menopause. So you're stuck. Well, Brooke is one of the most strong, self-advocating women that I know. She's half Latina, half white, entrepreneur in like classic good old boy white America, with the most traditional industry. She's a public affairs expert. She runs billion-dollar projects. And they still wore her down to the point where she reached a day where she just decided it was going to be better for everybody if she didn't exist anymore. So she tried to kill herself. And she stopped midway. And the only reason she stopped midway was because it was her daughter's birthday.
God.
And she knew that if she did it today, it would ruin her daughter's birthday for the rest of her daughter's life. And she didn't want to do that. So Brooke is finally telling me what happened very shortly after it happened. And I mean, that story alone is horrific enough, but for some reason, the next thing is what lands on me the most. And it said, what did you do after you stopped? And she said, I went back to making my daughter's birthday cake.
Yeah.
She had told me about this process, and she had also told me about struggling with depression and mental illness. And so she didn't write a note. So if she had actually completed the attempt, we would have all thought it was because of depression.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true. That would have been because of the lie that she was convinced of by the world around her, and that she was broken down into believing. And it took her about well over a year to feel like fully stabilized. Her husband came home that night, saw what's going on. They made it through the party. They got the right treatment. They just basically told the doctors, like, you will treat her or we will sue you. That's our only option. But you almost
Can I
could.
ask, what was that proper treatment? Because there's so many tentacles, right? To menopause.
Sure.
It's not like it's black and white. I'm just curious for our listeners, like what was proper treatment for her?
I believe it was hormone therapy.
Okay.
And to be honest, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know that we didn't go into that depth. But I will say this: part of that treatment was also therapy, and also going back to those doctors and saying, "This is what you almost did.
Yeah.
You need to know. Like, I would have died, and it would have been your fault.
Yeah.
You can't behave like this anymore." And so this actually, not to pivot away too hard to the outrage, but why not? We're here. um, this prompted me to go to some of my friends who are doctors and say, I'm curious, how much time total do you spend on menopause in medical school? What, you go to like 29 years of medical school, basically? How much time? Every single one of them said the same thing. 1 week.
It's unbelievable.
1 week. And I asked a couple of OBs as well, and they said the same thing. They said, we're just not taught that menopause is part of the essential care we provide to people who have uteruses.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's what got me into it. And the more that I learned about it, cared about it, the more that I realized how damaging it is to women's careers and women's sense of self and women's prospects, and especially single women without partners, whether they're divorced or they were never married, single income women, women who are mothers and single mothers by choice or by circumstance, people whose real safety and security relies on their ability to earn until they choose to retire.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start looking at data like the average retirement age of men versus women in America, it's a two-year differential. On average, women retire around age 63 and men retire on average around age 65. Now, that's just the average. So some are younger and some are older. But when you start digging into the reasons why women exit the workforce earlier, you start realizing that a lot of it is not really by choice. And so I started really talking about this because I know, not that I'm comparing this circumstance, but I know from being a gay man that when you're part of a marginalized community, you don't have the power to resolve your own oppression.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the really shitty aspects of those realities. But the people who are in the majority and have the easiest access to the power need to be part of speaking that truth to other people who have that power.
Yeah.
If we want the thing to resolve. So a part of my work has become giving this message to male leaders. I will say this, though, it's fascinating to me. Every time I've done this workshop, it's been majority women. There's been some men, but mostly women. And also every time several women have said, I've never talked about this ever in my life before publicly, and definitely not in a professional context. And I've done some of the same things to my female colleagues and my female direct reports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not just
talking about men doing to women. And so I think it's larger than just gender, but that's kind of the basis my thoughts on it and the impact and why I'm so passionate about this issue.
Got it. And so, our listeners are both leaders and humans and individuals.
Mhm.
Let's start from the leader perspective,
Sure.
right? So what, right? Like one, talking about it and making awareness, that's amazing. Like the bar is so low that is super helpful
Sure.
in of itself. But, what are some tangible, 2 or 3 like tangible things that they can do differently to make sure that they are, more supportive of women through
Totally.
this stage?
Sure. I think the first thing is you gotta signal the safety for women to talk
Mhm.
about what they want to at
Yeah.
work, but you
Yeah.
can't ask them about it.
Yeah, that's really good.
So you
For
have
safety.
to respect those boundaries, not only because of policy and law, but also because of the emotional safety that's necessary for a woman to choose to disclose this.
Mm,
So I think it's about creating a consistent culture of safety,
yeah.
signaling that this is something that's okay to talk about. From my understanding of laws and policies, it's okay for a leader to say in a group setting, or maybe even a one-on-one setting, but I would prefer it only be group because then people don't feel compelled to disclose things they don't want to disclose. But to say, hey, just so you know, this is something you can talk about. If you choose to, the power is yours. But if you want to bring this up, this is how I'm going to respond. And then the next thing I would say to answer your question as asked is if someone does disclose it, it needs to be about accommodation.
Mm,
How can I accommodate you to make it possible for you to still bring your best performance and not be terrified of losing your job, not be afraid of being punished for this naturally occurring biological process, um, and be open to what that needs to be.
yeah.
And I talked with a woman who I call my menopause mentor about
Mm,
these tactics, a brilliant woman named Elizabeth Marino. And she said, she got lucky a few times with having really supportive managers. And actually, she said her most supportive manager on this topic was actually a male who was a former Marine drill sergeant.
Oh, jeez.
But so she found that dichotomy interesting. But uh, they just he just made it possible for her to say, "Hey, today's going to be a 3-hour workday. Sorry,
Yeah.
I got brain fog or I'm hot flashing, and I can give you 3 hours today, and that's it." And he was like, "Great, no problem. I know that those 3 hours are going to be super valuable for my business, and then you're going to go get what you
And go
need
get
with your
recharged. Yeah.
body, and you're going to come back tomorrow or the next day." I don't whatever. Like he genuinely practiced what so many leaders preach, but never actually do, which is I don't care when or where you work as long as you deliver results.
Yeah.
So that was part of it was saying, I'm going to be flexible about how you deliver value to my business um, in ways that don't really force your body into something it's not going to do right now. Um, so I think that's
And
big.
I
Yeah.
love, I'll tell you why I love that. It might be a little different than might think. From my personal experience, and I put it into aging slash menopause, right? I'm 51, right? Like definitely had the 50-year-old birthday reckoning. I think a lot of the challenge beyond the physical, which are real,
Yeah.
as a woman, we feel like we've lost control. More control than we ever, yes, we lost control of our life if we had kids and we were beholden to their schedule, but of our bodies and how they function, of our weight and how it functions, because everything changes there.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation with somebody the other day and who hasn't been through it, and they're like, "Oh, that makes sense." And I think just being an employer who gives control and autonomy to somebody and their work hours and their flexibility, like modeling that you haven't lost all control, not just because of your body, your age, your menopause, but also at work.
Yeah.
Like that can be, I think, a tipping point for women where it's like, my best years are over
Yeah.
and it's all just, downhill and I have no control over it. And so I think
Yeah.
control is a big thing.
Yeah. And and I'm thinking about a couple of things here. I got to tell this story because I think it's so hilarious. Um, so this actually was with Brooke as well. This was sort of the precursor for all of this, even though I didn't know it at the time. So Brooke and I will vacation together maybe once or twice every 2 years. And it's like our summit. And all we really do is we go somewhere for 4 days and we eat and we talk, which is like the best. So in this particular time, it was right after it became safe to travel after COVID. And we ended up going to the Bahamas just because I could get a hotel room on points or whatever. And it was fun.
Yeah.
So anyway, it just so happens to be like horrible weather at this family friendly resort. So we're in the Bahamas and you've got these families of like 4 to 6 people who came here for a tropical vacation. And then it's like a stormy Tuesday in February in New Jersey the whole time.
Ugh.
So the parents are just like broken people, because they're so exhausted of their children and they spent all this money and they're just cloistered together. So we're in the dining area, this huge hotel dining area with the buffet, surrounded by families of parents and children. And this whole time, the conversation topic for Brooke and I was pretty much like a woman's experience in the world today. And so it was a lot of listening and learning and curiosity for me. And it was just gold. Anyway, we get to one point. I can talk about sex here.
Sure. Go
Okay.
for it.
Get to one point where we talk about sex and fulfillment, and she gets to a point where she says, it's pretty common for men or husbands to not, go down on their wives. And this was completely new news to me. And as a gay man who's never with a woman. And so I slam my hands down on the table and I'm like, they don't go down on their wives? And like everybody turns to
Thanks
us.
for fully ruining our vacation.
Oh shit. And of course we die laughing because this is really hilarious to us. But the reason why it was so profound to me was like growing up, like as a boy, and especially as a boy who was constantly bullied because I wasn't straight. You hear boys and men always talk about, vagina and everything. And I'm just like, you'd want to interact with it with every way possible.
That's right. Based on
But in my mind, plus, there were certain things I enjoy as a gay man that like, why wouldn't you do that? So, but it started a point of curiosity. And I was like, why does that happen? How does that happen? And what Brooke helped me understand is that for better or worse, intentionally or not, most men view a woman's body as a utility. And there's a real lack of curiosity, not only about a woman's experience, but about her body. And then when you extend that, what it's like to be in that body at work at different ages.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my message to men is get genuinely curious and then also accept the truth, whether it makes sense to you or not. Like the death of mansplaining, please. And what it sounds like in a man's mind when he mansplains something to himself is, I hear what she's telling me, but I'm going to stick with what I think. And in this context, what a man is actually saying to himself is that even though I can't any way relate to what she's describing personally, I'm still going to decide that I know her body better than she does. And I do think that a large majority of male leaders, that's their operative thinking here.
Yeah.
Now, I do not think that it is consciously malicious on their part. I think it is born of ignorance. And I think it's because the world never really requires them.
Hey there, it's Erin. I'm just popping in real quick to ask you a question. Is there any chance you know someone who is looking for a keynote speaker for their upcoming event? Look, I know that many event organizers, they struggle to find a speaker who provides both tangible value and business knowledge, but that also lights their audience on fire. And I truly believe there aren't many speakers like me out there who are both former corporate executives and professionally trained speakers. And there's definitely none that roll in with an orange suitcase they unpack with their audience. Trust me on that. I would love nothing more than to bring my message of using authenticity as your strategic career and business advantage to people spinning in your universe, especially if you'd be there. I promise my talks always create an immediate buzz, but not just right after, but for months and years after the event is over. You can learn more about my message, style, and reviews, and share my speaking info by going to beauthenticinc.com/keynote-speaking. That's B, just the letter B, authenticinc.com/keynote-speaking. Or of course, we have it right in the show notes to make it easy for you too.
And what about from the woman's perspective? Because, again, I think you're right. Like from a male perspective, it's simple, but it's hard. It's that safety, that safe space, which doesn't have to just be around talking about menopause, right? That's whole psychological safety, which I don't use that term, but a lot of it is, being more authentic and the things that I talk about and making fun of yourself and creating that space where people aren't perfect and are vulnerable. So that if that's their role is sort of like, in general, be aware and don't assume and listen and give them that space. What is women going through this? Which again, it's so hard because it's so not distinct and it can be for such a long time and affecting.
Yeah.
But what can they do? I mean, you talked about your friend Brooke and how strong she was, but yes, she struggled to advocate from a health perspective. But
Yeah.
what can women do differently in the workplace in particular to
Sure.
sort of meet in the middle?
So, for a couple things. First thing, safety first. And what I mean by that is that um, don't feel compelled to do things that would lower your sense of peace of mind about your ability to keep your job and get what you need from your job for yourself and your loved ones. But I know that's a double bind, just like most things for women. So acknowledge that. Sometimes you have to disclose to get more safety.
Yeah.
But I think that always remember you are in control of what you share and when and why. Don't let anybody bully you into that. I think that talking to other people about it, any gender that are going to be sympathetic, especially outside of work, is really helpful. And what surprised me, again, as a gay man who watched Sex and the City for 10 years solid in my 20s and 30s, what surprised me was that every time I've done this workshop, there have been women that say, I've never talked with another woman about this before. And so what media shows us is groups of women talking about these issues constantly to each other. And I have found some generational differences here, but especially women who are baby boomers and Gen Xers, so our age and up, they were probably taught by their mothers, you don't talk about this.
Yeah.
Or you don't talk about it outside the home. And so I do think that a lot of women are taught that you just don't talk about this in any context. And so there's a lot of isolation that comes along with it. The third thing I would encourage people to keep in mind is that, and what I've learned from the women I've talked to is that there is such a huge spectrum of which symptoms an individual has and how severe they are, how long they last. And so empathy is so vital. You can't judge someone else's menopause experience by the standards of what you yourself experienced. And I have to give credit to, again, several women who I've had in these workshops that have come up afterward or even in the group discussion at the end and said, I'm realizing that my experience with menopause was pretty easy by comparison to what other people have shared here today. And I'm realizing that I was not really very supportive to some of my friends and neighbors who were going through it because I was looking at how much they were struggling and comparing it with how easy it was for me.
And that is the challenge. It's different for everyone. And you want to share. It's sort of like when you have a baby and you've figured out how to put them to sleep and you want to share that because you want everybody, you want your friends to have your baby sleep. And so, you share it, but also at the same time, their baby may have colic, their baby, maybe, it's just different. And, I mean, the good news is my friends and I share. I think that that's where the internet is great. Places like Instagram. I mean, the conversation around menopause, I think, has really exploded on, social media in the last couple of years. And I don't know if you ever see Melanie Sanders and her We Do Not Care Club that has just completely
No.
exploded. It probably doesn't hit your algorithm. It doesn't know that it should, but you have to. So I think it's Melanie. If I'm getting it wrong, I feel bad, but it's Melani and then Sanders. And I think she's been a content creator for a while, but one day I think the story was she was just like, she was in the parking lot of the grocery store looking like we do in the parking lot of a grocery store on a whatever Sunday morning or whatever, not put together. And she recorded a video, and the basic was like, I just don't care anymore. And so she turned it into that when it exploded. And so she's turned it into this satirical, but also powerful, We Do Not Care Club. And she opens every video by, we are part of the We Do Not Care Club. We are perimenopausal and menopausal women putting the world on notice that we simply do not care anymore. And then she's hilarious. She brings out like an old school, 3-ring binder like my kids would have and a highlighter. It
Yeah.
goes through, all the things she doesn't care about. And while that's satirical and funny, it's also real and true. And I think very empowering for women to say, oh my God, this is how I feel. Because some of that stuff is funny, but some of it's funny because it's so freaking real.
Yeah. And like I know that the legalities and the liabilities around this get murky.
In the corporate or in the work setting.
Any employment situation.
Yeah, employment setting.
Right. But menopause is medical.
Yeah.
It's a medical condition. It is illegal to discriminate against someone for a medical condition. I could be wrong. HR lawyers correct me, but my understanding is that it is patently illegal to discriminate against somebody for experiencing a medical condition.
Right.
And I really think employers should take this more seriously.
Yeah.
Because they feel protected by the performance improvement plan. Because what a PIP, a performance improvement plan, does essentially is it creates a context around someone's termination. And it makes the company feel like they can prove that they gave the employee opportunity to improve the problems before they were let go. So if they get sued for wrongful termination, they have the get out of jail free card, essentially.
Yep.
No matter what anybody tells you, that is the purpose of a performance improvement plan.
100%.
It's to create a context that protects the employer in the event of terminating an employee. And if it's an acceptable narrative that the impacts of menopause diminish someone's performance ability to a point that they can get fired for it, that's not an accurate read of what's happening.
Yeah.
This is a medical condition that should be accommodated upon request. And it kind of, it baffles me that there's not more conversation about this, even from the legal and liability perspective. And I want to be clear, I am not putting that on the women who experience this.
Yeah.
It is not your responsibility to navigate that bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? Your employer should be protecting you, but that's not what employers are made to do.
Although it is on the women that are leaders who may be also leaders of these women, right? So
yeah, and I guess to comment on that as well, I have talked a lot about how like the lack of understanding among men, but I have found that there's a lack of understanding, empathy among fellow women as well.
Yeah,
I'm still finding if I feel like I have the right to have a voice in that conversation. But what I can say is that from what I've learned from the women who are leaders and also not leaders is that there is room for empathy among a woman to woman as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I love it. I want to finish off though, with the couple questions I usually ask. This has been so helpful. Like I said, I love everything that you stand for, but when I heard one of your niches is to talk about, menopause at work, it's just like a conversation we can't have too much of. I want to ask you or Buck that question. So we always ask our listeners, can you think of a time or a story when you bucked the norm and great things happened anyway, or because of that bucking the norm?
Actually, it happened literally when I was sitting in this chair that I'm in right now. So I got laid off from an executive job at a big tech company in October of 2023. And like a lot of executives at that time, that was a time when companies that needed to course correct on their costs had already laid off all the other layers they could get rid of. So they were targeting vice president level salaries because they had mismanaged their companies so deeply to the point that they had to cut executives as well. And only in hindsight did I realize how deeply vulnerable, how deeply that layoff rocked me. But a week after, so I kind of knew it was coming. In fact, I told my husband the weekend before, just so you know, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get laid off this week. So I'm emotionally preparing for that to happen. I thought it was going to happen on a Wednesday. It happened on a Monday because I actually called my boss the week before and I was like, hey, am I getting fired? Like all the things are pointing in that direction. And
Sounds like the same, I don't like the chips, Phil, that we all know.
Yeah. He was very supportive, but he didn't answer the question. So I knew I was gone.
Yeah.
And so, but my husband, Raj, I told him, give me a week to kind of figure out what I'm going to do. And so a week passed and he was standing right here in the kitchen and I was sitting here. He's like, what are you going to do? And I said, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I'm going to build my own business. Now, I'm not an innately courageous person, at least not the way that I was raised. I was raised to be small. It's taken a long time to realize that I was not born to be small. I was just raised to be small. But that moment of deciding subconscious, I feel so vulnerable. I can't tolerate the idea of putting my fate back on somebody else's hands.
Yeah.
So it's safer for me to risk entrepreneurship than it is to go find a job working for somebody else again. And I wasn't even close to understanding the full scope of what I was choosing. But that was a moment that fundamentally altered the course of my life and my work because now I am a professional speaker, an author, and entrepreneur. And now I do talk about menopause. Now I do get to make a dream come true of supporting women in a way that doesn't relegate their opportunities because of their bodies and gives them more control in how they choose to spend their career and their lives and the full extent of it. I wouldn't have been able to do that.
Yeah.
If not for that moment. So that's what comes to mind. Yeah.
I love it. Last question, kind of a softball one, but before I ask that, where can people learn more, follow you, engage more in your content?
Sure. So LinkedIn is my jam. It's actually the only social media I'm active on. And then also my website. I actually literally just launched a new website this week. So it's real pretty.
Go through. Yeah, I was out on it. It looks amazing. I didn't know it was there.
So it's philputnam.com. And then on LinkedIn, if you just, it's Phil Putnam Speaks is my link. But if you just search for Phil Putnam, you'll see my face come up.
Got it. Connected to Erin Hatzkostas for sure. Last question. What's your one final tip to make work suck less for people?
Accept the fact that people will always love themselves more than they love their employer.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty simple.
Yeah. Don't put against it. If you can't beat them, join them. I love it.
Exactly. Be human. Exactly.
But thank you for bringing your human, amazing, loving yourself self to the podcast, and I love everything you're doing, and can't wait to share it with all our listeners.
I'm so happy to be a part of it. I want to be your guest every week just so we can keep talking.
Just so we can keep talking. Well, we'll have you back. We'll have you back for sure.
Thank you so much.
Hey, it's Erin with a teeny request. If you have ever gotten any value from this podcast and you'd like us to stick around, plus you want it to continue to grow so we can kind of swindle bigger and more knowledgeable guests to join us, and to keep providing you with tangible and inspiring actions you can take to achieve the career and life you deserve, could you please just take 1 minute to leave us a rating and a review? Those reviews go a long way in attracting guests to the show, and candidly, they really make Nicole and I's day. We see you. We really do. So when you have the time and inspiration, we'd love to see a rating and review from you. Thank you.